touching on the everyday thermostat control. So we'll get that, like I said, we'll kind of get the recording going right now, and then we're going to share our screen and have a little PowerPoint presentation like Randy had said for everyone this afternoon. Okay. So again, I'd like to welcome everybody to our short presentation today. So today we're going to be talking about the everyday thermostat control, or just the ETC. So from now on, when we talk about the ETC, we're talking about the everyday thermostat control. This is actually a new control we're going to be offering on our core product, and we'll get into more details in just a little bit. But this commercial control review, basically, we're going to do a kind of little side-by-side video, as you can see, or a picture. On the left-hand side, we have our standard Simplicity SE control. This is the standard control on all of our commercial units. And on the right-hand side is a picture of our new everyday thermostat control. Now, the neat thing about this control, we'll dig into more details here in a minute or two, but this control is optimized, and I want to stress this, is optimized for a 24-volt only control. So this is a thermostat only control. You're going to run 18-gauge thermostat wire to it. You're going to hook up your favorite thermostat to it. We do recommend a minimum 2-stage heat, 2-stage cool thermostat for optimal operation. And all the controls on this thing are going to be 24-volt driven. Even some of the safeties, are going to be thermostat or 24-volt control. So instead of having like sensors that like we have on the Simplicity control board and a user interface, and sensors that have a nominal calibration point of like 10,000 ohms at 77 degrees, this everyday thermostat control is strictly 24-volt driven. So kind of keep that in perspective, please. So as we talk a little bit about that everyday thermostat control, it's a very, very intuitive control. It uses a traditional 24-volt thermostat. And again, we recommend a minimum 2-stage heat, 2-stage cool thermostat for optimal operation. It has simple diagnostics. It's going to have an LED display with some flash codes that you can retrieve off the board. The equipment is going to be protected with a high and low pressure switch, as well as a freeze stat and low voltage detection. And then it does also have anti-short cycle protection as well. Now, when you're selecting this, and again, remember, team, this is going to be available on the core product, what we call the core product. We used to call that the CDR, the commercial direct replacement product, but we've changed the name of that to the core product. And it'll be that 3 through 12.5 ton footprint. And as you're selecting it, you can kind of see the green arrow right there on my PowerPoint. It's going to be an option on the core product. So when you go down where it says control option, you'll be able to select that everyday thermostat control. Now, some neat things about the control, team. Basically, it's going to save you some time because you don't have a bunch of setup. It's just basically just a straight thermostat hookup on low voltage terminal strips. Very simple wiring, very conventional as far as the industry is concerned on the 24-volt hookup, and it will save you a little bit of money. It is slightly less expensive than the Simplicity SE control that comes standard on our commercial equipment. And so there's a picture of the Simplicity SE control. Now remember, team, this is standard on all of our commercial units. It's a very intelligent control. It has autonomous operation. You can use it. It's very versatile. You can use it with a conventional thermostat or building management systems. It does have a user interface on there and a field programmable functions and default detection. And so this is pretty cool. It has the user interface and a joystick and some enter and cancel buttons. You can also get in on the thing with what we call a MAP device, a mobile access portal. As far as equipment protection is concerned, it has high and low pressure switches, indoor and outdoor coil temperature, return air temperature, supply air temperature, outdoor air temperature sensing, and these are all factory installed sensors. So this is very much a sensor driven control board, in that it's going to have sensors instead of just like 24-volt clicks on or 24-volt switches. As far as serviceability, it's really kind of cool in the fact that you can program the thing to set up for emergency operation. You can set here with the Simplicity SE control, and you can set the thing up from the user interface to run all by itself without any input from any device, any thermostat, and so on. It does have a USB port for upgrading, as well, again, as a map device, that mobile access portal for remote sensing and remote servicing. So again, this is our basic control on all of our commercial units. And again, down below, you'll see the little green arrow on the left-hand side there. Under the control option, you can still order this as your standard control, or on the core product, you can go to the everyday thermostat control that we're going to be reviewing a little bit deeper now. Is there any questions or comments before we continue? Is everybody good?
Joel, I just want to make sure the standard everyday control does not have a USB option, correct?
That is correct. And as we start looking at that control a little bit more, Randy, we'll dig into that deeper. But in answer to that good question, it does not have a user interface. It doesn't have a joystick. It doesn't have an enter and cancel button, and it doesn't have a USB port to upgrade anything. And so it's just a standard basic control. It's several notches above an electromechanical control where you just have a thermostat running a contactor. It's got some real neat features we're going to talk about. And again, it's optimized for a simple 24-volt operation. Good question.
Thank you.
Okay, let's take a look at that everyday thermostat control team as we start digging into some of the finer points of it. Again, it's designed for a 24-volt thermostat, 24-volt operation. You're going to run 18-gauge standard thermostat wire up to it. And you'll see here very shortly, it's very, very straightforward as far as the hookup or the low voltage wiring. W1 is first stage heating call. W2 would be second stage heating call on the two-stage product. Y1 is going to be first stage cooling call. That's very first stage cooling call. That's extremely conventional in our industry. G will be your fan call from the thermostat, calling for fan operation. Y2 would be your second stage cooling call. You'd expect that. Now, this is something kind of neat on our Johnson Controls Champion products. We have an X fault detection alarm output. So this is kind of cool in the fact that if there is an alarm on the board, or if you have a fault on the board, you'll actually output a 24-volt signal on this X terminal to flash a light on your thermostat if your thermostat is so equipped. And so if you do get a fault code on the board, it will output 24-volt, just a relay output on the board on the X terminal, which is a fault detection output. Ours 24-volt hot, you would expect that. That's your normal 24-volt hookup. This 24V is an auxiliary 24-volt output on the board. Now this can be used. We typically do not use this because we have 24-volt up above where we bring power into the board. So this is an auxiliary terminal, 24-volt terminal that normally is not used. So kind of make a little note of that. That's normally not used. We'll actually input power to the board up above where we see C and 24-volt, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But that is an auxiliary terminal for 24-volt. And then right below that, we have 24-volt common, the C terminal, which is, no pun intended, but that's very, very common in the industry, C for 24-volt common. Any questions or comments on the conventional thermostat hookup on the board? Everybody good? Okay, up above we have a limit. Now this is a 24-volt input from our heating section. And so this has to have 24 volts on this. By the way, year-round, I want to stress that. The board's looking for a 24-volt closed limit year-round on this limit input. And that's very similar to the Simplicity SE control. You'll have a 24-volt input on that limit year-round because the board has to see that to function properly. Right next to him, we have 24-volt powering the board. You'll notice there's just two terminals, 24V and C, and these are the terminals that actually power up the board and energize all the functions on the board. This board has some configuration jumpers, and you'll notice that from the factory, those will be configured for the appropriate equipment you have, whether it's a gas pack, or whether it's an electric, straight cooling with electric or what have you. So if it's either, it'll configure that. And then you'll also notice there's some compressor 1 and 2 configurations based on if you have a single stage or a 2-stage product. And then, but again, this will come from the factory configure, but that's what you'll see up there for board configuration. Down below, we have a test reset button. And so this board will actually give us some flash codes or some diagnostics on some LEDs that we'll talk about here in a second. But if you want to retrieve those flash codes, you can do that with this reset test button here. And by the way, if you hold that test button down, I'm thinking for maybe 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, it'll clear the memory on the fault codes. Right up above again, you see T1, 2, and 3. This is low voltage detection. And so if we have like a brownout condition, or if you have those types of conditions on the job site, we can actually detect low voltage detection by monitoring or by looking at the T1, 2, and 3 low voltage detection. Right next to him, you're going to have some status LEDs. These status LEDs are going to will flash various flash codes and status. You'll have a green and a red LED. And so again, you'll be able to go to your reset test button and utilize that function for troubleshooting on the board. So you have some status and some fault LEDs built in on the board. Any questions or comments so far on the layout of the board of the everyday thermostat control? Is everybody good? Okay, as we move around the board, we see we have a FS1 and FS2. These are freeze switches. They're actually an input-output. You'll notice that each one of those input outputs, they've got 2 pins. And so based on how many refrigeration circuits you have, if you have a small unit with just a single refrigeration circuit, you'll just have 1 freeze stat. But if you have 2, you'll have 2 freeze stats, and you'll notice that it is 24 volt, by the way. These are all 24 volt outputs, input outputs to a freeze stat. Well, this is pretty neat too. Something that I really like is the fact that, the everyday thermostat control has an output for a VFD. So if you start getting into your higher tonnages, maybe a 7.5 or a 10 or a 12.5 ton unit, and it's equipped with a VFD, we have a fan VFD output. Now remember, this is going to be driven by whatever stage you're calling for, whether it's first stage heating, second stage heating, first stage cooling, second stage cooling, fan only operation, those types of things. This fan output is actually a 2 to 10 volt DC output to our variable frequency drive if the unit is so equipped with a VFD. So I really like that, because the variable frequency drive indoor blower is a real popular option that we see on our commercial equipment. And so to have that VFD output capability on this simple everyday thermostat control, I think is a real bonus and a real selling feature. Any questions or comments so far on the components we've talked about on the board? Is everybody good? Okay, team, as we move down to the board, some of the more specifics, you'll notice at the bottom of the board, these are outputs. In the lower right-hand corner, it says H1 and H2. These are the actual heating outputs for first and second stage heating from the board to the heating section. And so you'll notice that that H1 and H2, again, those are outputs to the heating section, calling or demanding, or if you have a heating command, to the heating section, first and second stage heating. Now, right along those same little pins down there, you're going to notice there's also an MV. That MV is an input from the gas heating, or from the gas valve during the heating mode. And what that does, that reports back, the heating section reports back to the board that the gas valve is open and that we're sensing flame. And so this is kind of an input to the board from the gas heating valve, or from the gas valve, and the gas heating section reporting back that we do have valid heating operation. As we move along the bottom of the board, we see that we're going to have some outputs to our condenser fan contactor. So anytime we have a cooling operation, we'll have an output on the CN fan, and that'll be for condenser fan operation. We also have some outputs for indoor fan contactors, fan 1 and 2. And again, based on the size of the equipment and stuff, you may utilize one or both of those fan 1 and 2 contactor outputs. Right next to that, you have your C1 and C2. Again, based on the staging or how large the unit is, you may only have one output to a compressor contactor coil, or you may have two if you have two compressors. So the C1 and C2 will be the outputs to the compressor contactors for compressor operation. Now, please remember, team, these are all 24-volt outputs. So they're input-output, to the compressor contactor for compressor contactor operation. And they're all 24-volt outputs. This bank of LPS1, HPS1, and so on, these are high pressure switch and low pressure switch input outputs. Again, you'll have two wires coming from each one to the low pressure switches and high pressure switches. Now remember, team, if you only have a single stage unit, you'll just utilize the LPS1 and HPS1, high and low pressure switch one if you have a single stage unit. If you have a multi-stage unit, you'll utilize both of them for each refrigeration circuit. So that pretty much takes us around the board. As again, one of the things that we like to stress is this is a very, very simple board. It's easy to hook up. We think it's going to be real popular with our wind supply locations because, quite frankly, we find that most of our commercial equipment that's installed that we sell to our wind supply locations around the country, most of the commercial equipment that's installed is going to have a conventional thermostat on it anyway. So we think this is going to be a real popular control. There's not a lot of complexity to it. There's not a lot of a learning curve with it. Specifically, again, as we mentioned in the beginning of the program, it's very, very intuitive. It hooks up easy to troubleshoot. We have some LED flash codes and some diagnostics on the board, but we don't have any complexity as far as setting up sensors and user interface, and that, again, that learning curve is going to be much less on this everyday thermostat control. Any questions or comments on the control before we start kind of running or concluding our training today, running towards the end or concluding today?
Yes, hi Joel, it's Jess.
Yes.
Which thermostat, so what requirements does a thermostat need to have to work with this board?
Okay, that's a really good question, Jessica. As a matter of fact, my last slide is going to be on a recommended thermostat. But in answer to your good question, we're going to recommend just as a base core thermostat, just a 2 heat, 2 cool thermostat for that has 2 heat, 2 cool function. Conventional 24-volt thermostat is what we're going to recommend. However, to Jessica's good point, we do have a really great commercial model thermostat that's going to work really, really well with this. You can see the model number up there. You might want to write that down at that S1-TBP uniform 436-S. This is a really nice looking thermostat. It's got some commercial features on the thing. Specifically, it's up to 4 heat and 2 cool, which is going to work perfect for this piece of equipment. This thermostat is also gas, electric, or heat pump, and it's switchable, programmable or non-programmable. And that's one feature that I really, really like. You can kind of read some of the finer points over there. I won't read every one of them to you. But the highlights on this thermostat that I really like are the fact it's 4 heat and 2 cool. And you can set it up for programmable or non-programmable, because a lot of times building owners, they don't want to mess with the program, or maybe they do like a programmable. But either way, you can set it up for programmable or non-programmable. Another thing I really like about it is its Wi-Fi is built in, and so you can access all these features remotely from your mobile device. Whether it's an iPad or a phone, an iPhone. And so from a really nice thermostat that's going to be compatible, with this product, to Jessica's good question, is what we call the CTS series commercial model. And again, the model that I mentioned up there, you can kind of read it for yourself on the PowerPoint slide. So this is going to be a real nice thermostat for this application. Good question, Jessica. Any other good questions or comments?
Joel, I just have a question for Jeff and Adam. After seeing the board and reviewing this, guys, what percentage of products do you think you might use it on?
Honestly, I think this could replace most of the,
Yeah, I think it would replace the majority of what we do.
absolutely.
Yeah. And that was kind of my thought too. I appreciate you guys telling us that, because Jessica and myself and some of our team members, we've talked about this, and I feel the same way, especially, this is available now on the core product, that what we call the core product, that 3 through 12.5 ton, core product. And I really think it's a stroke of genius myself, truthfully, because if you realize what you're looking at, it's very, very simple. It's very intuitive. And I think I have that same opinion. It's going to be a real winner with our locations that sell, simple commercial applications.
Yeah, I agree.
Andy, about how much less will this save us on the cost of a unit?
Jessica, I'm going to let you kind of jump in on that. She's looked at that on a couple different models. What was the cost difference or the cost differential, Jessica, between the everyday thermostat control and the simplicity control, the standard control?
Yeah, so on the MLP, it's about $100 less. So it just depends on the model, but roughly about $100. Now, remember though, we love the ETC control, but it does take away from the ability to use the MAP gateway.
That is true.
And to tie in directly with Verisys. So there are some pros and cons for both of them. Just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of that. And also keep in mind that this is only available on the core. So if we're replacing any of the small Sunline or the Pro units, if you're using like our ZD or ZS model, they do not come with this control board.
Okay. And what about the choice units? Are those going to be strictly SE control as well?
Yes, that is correct. And
okay.
Honestly, I think we're looking at seeing how successful this board is. I mean, I'll tell you, we've had a really great response, especially from other local companies. I have a local company in Rhode Island that put in a stocking order with all ETC boards. So I think the factory is seeing the response that we get from everybody on this before they introduce it into other platforms.
And that's an excellent point, Jessica, because to her good point, if we do see a lot of success and a lot of sales with this board, and of course, technical support and after sales support, we see the success of this board out in the field, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Johnson Controls, makes the decision to offer this on other products as well, to her good point.
Hey, Joel, could you back your slide up to the control board again real quick? One thing that I didn't notice, does this thing have the capability of operating like an economizer or any kind of accessory?
That's an excellent question, and thank you for bringing that up. And the answer is yes, it does. But it's going to be, when you go to your selection tool, and when you choose this board, you'll notice that the economizer that's going to be available with it is going to be a different model number than the one with the SE control.
Well, right, yeah, they're going to have different controls because the SE one is communicating. So
that is correct. And
okay.
So the answer is yes. It's just going to be a different model.
It's going to be a different economizer. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Question. I mean, if that's the case, I don't see why this wouldn't replace 90% of what we're doing.
I appreciate you saying that. That, Jessica and I, as we were discussing this, in more detail and deeper, we both held that same opinion, that this could be a real smash hit for you guys out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think, Joe, if you don't mind sending us this presentation, we'll get it to Darren and see if this is something that he'd be willing to stock for us in all of our stores.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll let Randy be the scribe on that. I'll be sure he gets this presentation. in addition, after our meeting today, I'm going to go ahead and put this presentation recording out on our commercial YouTube channel.
Okay.
And so you'll be able to view it as many times as you want to, and Randy can coach you on how to get out there and look at that YouTube channel.
Perfect.
Hey, Joel.
Jessica, this is a question for Jessica. So to back to the pricing question I had, you're saying it's about $100 list savings?
Yes, about $100 on the list price. So it could be a little bit deeper just depending on the model, and that's on average.
Yeah. I mean, Adam, for $60, you really think it's worth it? Because we're losing a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, and you know how many tech calls we'd be losing as well?
Well, that's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And you know, not to beat up our Simplicity Control. The Simplicity Control it's a great control. It really is. It's very versatile. Gives you lots of functions. But you know, it's kind of like, you know, the more you load up the plumbing, the easier it is to stop the drain, right? And so and so the Simplicity Control, even though it's got all these wonderful functions, you know, a lot of times, you know, local companies and contractors, when they get it, you know, the first thing I get a call about is, well, do I have to upgrade it, or do I have to, you know, go to the USB and do all that stuff if I'm just going to hook it up to a conventional thermostat? And the answer is no. And then if you change a board out, you know, we want you to go in and do a relearn on the thing, and then tell it thermostat only enable, yes, and all that stuff. So I mean, it's not hard, but it can involve several steps to really commission the board properly, you know, for your specific application. Where this board here, it's just a everyday thermostat control. That's an adequate and appropriate name. Yes, sir.
Joel, is the Simplicity Light board going completely away now?
Yes, that's a good question. So basically, the Simplicity SE control is the standard control across all of our commercial platform at this time.
Okay.
Yes, good question. Excellent question. Well, with the exception of this, now, of course, this is the option, as Jessica said, on our core only product for the time being.
Right.
And in Selection Navigator, it's still going to default to the SSE board. So when you're selecting it in Selection Navigator, this will not be the default.
Good point,
Is
Jessica.
that live on Selection Navigator now?
Yes, it is, and you're able to order them now as well.
Okay.
Excellent questions.
I definitely see the need for both boards for you guys, because you do a lot of design, build, and plan and spec that the SSE board might be ideal for that application. But for your everyday, you know, I need a rooftop today or tomorrow. You know, we have a unit down at the restaurant. I think that this is really the perfect one, because as what Joel said, and Adam, what you said earlier about the tech calls, it's a very simple thermostat, just a standard thermostat that they have to use. Yep.
Yeah, and I didn't mention anything about this, but I'll go ahead and make a quick little comment. You know, if a building owner, you know, wants to do some zoning with like a conventional, you know, just a aftermarket zoning system like a Honeywell or a Durazone or an EWC zoning system that's 24-volt driven, this would be the absolute perfect one to do it with, because it's simple, it's straightforward, it's already configured for 24-volt. It's very, very intuitive. And let's say you had a little strip mall or something that you wanted to have a, you know, 2 or 3 zones on, and you had a Honeywell or an EWC zoning system in there, this would interface with that absolutely seamlessly. As a little side note.
That's great news.
Any other questions?
Any other good questions or comments?
If not, what I'll do, guys, is I'll get the presentation from Joel and I'll send it off to you along with a link to the recording.
Perfect.
Well, team, thank you very much for your attendance today. I sure appreciate the opportunity to train with everyone. And please reach out to Randy or Jessica or myself with any further questions. And I guess with that, if there's no further questions, we'll go ahead and secure for the day.
All
All
right.
right. Thanks a lot, Joel.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks,
You bet.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.